Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today, by popular demand, we will be reviewing every single studio album from Grammy Award-winning American heavy metal, sludge metal, stoner metal crew High on Fire. As per the norm with videos of this type and style and variety, I am not interested in EPs, demos, live albums, or compilations, or anything released by any kind of solo or side project. I am talking about all of the studio albums made only by High on Fire. I will be talking about each of them in order of release and assigning each a score out of 5. First up, we have The Art of Self-Defense, released in March 2000 via Man's Pain Records, and it's fine. It's fine. It's all right. Like it's okay. It's all right. It's okay. Look, don't get me wrong. It's got that musty, sludgy, crunchy, crusty sound that I think people want from High on Fire. It's dirty and gritty, and there's like some meditative trancey sections here and there, and Matt Pike on vocals sounding gruff as fucking hell. Like he sounds like a bear on this fucking thing. I like that we do have this almost more mystical, ethereal kind of lyricism contrasted with this very abrasive like sludge and stoner metal. But the songs themselves just aren't really that interesting, you know? They kind of simmer and stew away on the same beats and riffs and poundings, and the whole thing just ends up feeling really one-dimensional and really repetitive. Like, it's fun for a very quick, basic listen. Like, I can picture myself getting high to this thing and just kind of zoning the fuck out, which, to be fair, is the intention for most sludgy stoner metal, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, whatever, it does its job. I can't really hate it for that. But I don't know, man. I just leave this album not really remembering much of it and feeling like it just needs more big hooks, more thunderous, dynamic riffage. It needs more to say, and it needs more to do, and that's what's going to grab my attention, and that's not what's happening here. So I'm feeling a 2.5 out of 5. It's okay. I'm tempted to say that it's their worst album, or at least my least favorite in their discography. By no means terrible or unlistenable, just kind of basic, and kind of forgettable. Like, there's not much here that's really like, there's just not much here, period, you know, let alone, not much here that's blowing my mind. Next up, we have Surrounded by Thieves, released in May 2002 via Relapse Records, and we've got a slight improvement here. Slight, I want to make it clear. This isn't drastically different from The Art of Self-Defense. It is very simplistic and brutish, and it is definitely, as I think I would describe, a meat and potatoes kind of sludge stoner record, but there's just a little bit more going on, and just this little bit makes a world of difference. I feel like there's a little bit more atmosphere. It has this really nihilistic lyricism and tone. There's some like droning segments that add a lot of weight and ambience to this whole thing. The riffs and the grooves and the beat downs just hit a little bit harder. It's a little bit more visceral. It's a little bit more chunky and crunchy. I like some of the psychedelic vocal effects. I like some of the slow, trippy, doomy, lurching riffs and rhythms. There's a lot of like subtle melodicism all through this, especially in some of the guitar leads and stuff that I think helps as well. Overall, this album just has a lot more spice and swing and momentum and flavor. A lot of great songs on here like Thraft of Cannon, Razor Hoof, Speed Wolf, Hung, Drawn, and Quartered. Overall, I'm feeling a 3.5 out of 5, maybe leaning pretty close to a 3 out of 5. Like, maybe, to be honest, it's somewhere in between a 3 out of 5 and a 3.5 out of 5, but we're gonna let optimism win today, and 3.5 out of 5 will be the official rating for this particular bad boy. Just goes to show, sometimes those little changes, sometimes those extra little bits and pieces that you do, those extra little garnishes you throw on top, sometimes they really do make a world of difference. Next up, we have Blessed Black Wings, released in February 2005 via Relapse Records. There are no slight improvements this time. There are just straight-up improvements. High on Fire is really starting to really refine their sound and really starting to really expand their horizons with this bad boy. This record is much more energetic and frenzied and frantic. There's a lot more of like a classic speed metal, heavy metal kind of underbelly to this whole thing. There are psychedelic textures and acoustic arrangements and interludes and more melodic and epic riffs that really complement the musty, earthy, sludgy stoner metal sound. And the record is quite varied and diverse too. Like one moment you'll have a cut like Silver Black, which has this almost kind of death metal intensity to it with these unrelenting poundings and beatdowns. Then you have Cometh Down Hessian, which pairs some dark, epic, thunderous leads and riffage and some crescending outbursts with some more chunky, gruff, gritty, and dirty kind of old-school heavy metal, almost in the vein of like Motorhead, but if they tried to go in like a sludgy stoner metal kind of direction. Then there's To Cross a Bridge, maybe my favorite cut on the record, which I would genuinely describe as like a combination of the best elements of like Black Sabbath and Slayer. Like, you have these really pummeling and doomy guitar riffs and grooves with this kind of, like, earthy, down-tuned, dank and musty kind of Masters of Reality kind of tone and feel. And alongside that, you have some really intense percussion and some screaming vocals and some, like, dark, malicious kind of, like, thrash metal energies kind of popping up. Love the instrumental number and closing track Songs of Thunder as well. It just has this really cool, dark, epic kind of feel that, in a way, kind of reminds me of, like, some old-school Celtic Frost, like stuff like Into the Pandemonium and To Make a Therion. Unfortunately, I will make the argument that there are a couple duds on this bad boy. I personally don't care much for the opening number, Devolution. I also kind of feel like Blessed Black Wings is a little repetitive and sluggish in certain segments and parts. And also, as much as I like Songs of Thunder, it could benefit from being maybe just a little shorter, you know? Like, it doesn't really need to be, like, 7.5 minutes long, does it? Does it really? But overall, a pretty fucking damn good record. I'm feeling a very enthusiastic 3 to 5, leaning very close to a 4 to 5. And get ready, folks, because in case you haven't noticed, High on Fire gets better with every single album, and from here on, almost everything they do is fucking great. To the point where I think you could pick almost any album from, like, the post-Blessed Black Wings output, choose that as your favorite, and that's valid. That makes sense to me. It's all good. Hey, speaking of the post-Blessed Black Wings output, let's talk about Death Is This Communion, released in September 2007 via Relapse Records. This is probably the most different High on Fire have sounded up to this point. I mean, there are definitely some ideas that have been carried over from Blessed Black Wings, but I think this is just kind of a different thing all through and through. Like, lyrically, we're pulling more influence from H.P. Lovecraft and David Icke and the Bible. Musically, I feel like we're sticking pretty close to the realms of doom and sludge metal, with some more psychedelic and acoustic moments as well, some more epic transient moments as well. Sound-wise, production-wise, interestingly, this thing is leaner and cleaner and tighter. There's nowhere near as much static and feedback here as there was on Blessed Black Wings or other previous High on Fire records. You're still feeling the grit and the gristle, but, you know, it's not, you know, But I actually think that's a good thing for a number of reasons. For one, it allows a lot of the acoustic stuff and a lot of the more atmospheric stuff and all the different melodies and harmonies to really shine and sparkle. Another good thing about this production is Matt Pike's vocals are now also not buried in static and feedback, nor are they buried in psychedelic effects and such. He has a much more organic kind of vocal presence on this record, and while some might be turned off by his incredibly gruff voice, I personally think it has a lot of character and it communicates a lot of pain and anguish. Like, Mac Pike vocally has always been kind of compared to Lemmy Kilmister, and this is where you really hear it. Like, really, really hear it. And I think it all works really well. Like, I like the very triumphant feel of something like Ethereal. Headhunter and Canrad's Wall are just really cool instrumental pieces, the latter of which has some really strong acoustic guitar work, a lot of atmosphere, a lot of weight here. Fun fact, Cyclopean Scape is actually one of my favorite High on Fire tracks. I really like the very dark, mystical kind of like introduction. It opens this whole thing on this really spooky and mysterious note. And I also like these multi-layered, anguished, monotonous vocal harmonies and melodies layered on top of some pretty like hefty, muscular, primitive sludge metal pounding. Overall, I'm feeling a solid 4 to 5. I think High on Fire took a few risks here with the production and the sound, and I think it worked out really well for them. I enjoy this record quite a lot. Next up, we have Snakes for the Divine, released in February 2010 via E1 Music. This kind of feels like a cross between Blessed Black Wings and Deaf Is This Communion. Like, it has the leaner, cleaner sound, but it also has some more, like, energetic, kind of, like, thrashy moments. It's big and bold and epic, but it also does have these really primitive and, like, ballsy sections. This is also a more high concept and even spiritual record to a certain extent, as Matt Pike detailed in an interview. The title Snakes for the Divine is based on the premise that Adam and Eve weren't the first people on Earth, and Adam having a wife that was a reptilian named Lilith. They were the first two people to take the reptilian DNA and make shape-shifting human beings that go between the fourth dimensional, the Anunnaki, and human beings. Eventually, from ancient Mesopotamia, this spawned a thing called the Illuminati, the Enlightened Ones, coming up through the centuries and choosing the kings, controlling your media, controlling your banking, blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm not really interested in diving into the history of the Illuminati and Christianity and conspiracy theories. I'm not an expert on any of those things. I will just say, on surface level, all of that sounds nuts, but also kind of perfect for, like, a sludgy stoner metal album. Speaking of which, I will happily argue right off the bat that the title track and opening numbers, Snakes for the Divine, is not only the best track on the album, but it's one of the best songs High on Fire have ever made. They really did choose the perfect album opener for this bad boy. I mean, I love those, like, wailing guitars in the very beginning, opens this thing on just this massive, thunderous note. I feel like I'm soaring over a mountain when I hear this thing. I love how mean it is. I love all the different twists and turns. I like how we can go from more high-octane kind of epic metal to more groovy kind of stoner metal to these more like energetic kind of classic crusty heavy metal sections, and we have all these great pyrotechnics and like sizzling guitar parts. Bastard Samurai is another favorite of mine. This is High on Fire just going full-blown epic doom with these huge spacious sections, isolated vocals from Matt Pike, and some weird sound effects. Fire, Flood, and Plague also has some really breakneck, pulverizing sections as well. A lot of, like, thrash metal influence on its sleeve here. And I mean, you've also got Holy Flames of the Fire Spitter, Frost Hammer, How Dark We Pray. Very strong 4 to 5 here. I really like how High on Fire have blended all these different sounds and ideas from the last two albums into something completely brand new. I love how big it is. I love how bold it is. I love how weird it is. Just a fucking great record. Next up, we have De Vermis Mysteris, released in April 2012 via E1 Music. And this is another pretty different record for High on Fire. I feel like we're simultaneously re-tapping into the really dark, sludgy, abrasive sounds of early records like The Art of Self-Defense, and Surrounded by Thieves, but also we're diving further into like full-blown thrash metal. Like, this is a really intense, muscular, bloodthirsty, pulverizing record at times. The way that it balances these like really sludgy, really doomy influences with this more energetic and frantic and high-octane thrash metal is really exciting. And it's awesome to see that no matter what the speed of the tracks are, everything carries like the same level of like weight and heart and muscle. Like, everything just feels really heavy and agonizing and brutal, whether it be something that's like throwing out 120 beats per minute or something that's like really taking its time and really meditating on some really dark and stewy sounds. Like, you've got cuts like Warhorn, Madness of an Architect, and King of Days, which are slow and agonizing and grueling. A lot of static and feedback and wailing guitars and droning sounds and some super gruff vocals, even by Matt Pike standards, might I add. Super fucking gruff vocals, almost as if someone is like very slowly pulling a knife out of his back as he's recording this. Like, he sounds like he's in genuine fucking agony. And then there's like Fertile Green, Spiritual Right, Serums of Lao, which are happy to throw some super thrashy barrages at you, some super musty, crunchy riffs. Very aggressive, very powerful, very fun, a lot of fun guitar riffs, a lot of fun drum fills, a lot of chaos and madness and mayhem. A lot of really cool and talented producers have worked with High on Fire up to this point: Steve Albini, Greg Feidelman, but with this album, High on Fire collaborates with Kurt Ballou for the first time, and I mean, match made in heaven. Kurt consistently makes amazing music, both for his own bands and for plenty of others, but something about the way he produces music and something about the way High on Fire writes and presents music, it's a match made in heaven. It's too perfect. I'm feeling a very strong 4 to 5. I do find myself missing some of the more epic and ambitious elements of the last couple of records, but it's a thoroughly exciting and cool and brutal record. Despite that, it's great. Check it out. Holy shit. Next up, we have Luminiferous, released in June 2015 via E1 Music. And this is an important record for a couple of reasons. The first of which being that it was my first real introduction to High on Fire. It's the first time I really heard them and also of them. This was the first thing from High on Fire I bought on vinyl. As a result, I have a bit of a nostalgic attachment to this album. In fact, spoiler alert, this might be my favorite album from them. Just saying, just saying. But more importantly, in regards to actually talking about this album, in regards to actually having a conversation about the quality of this album, what it's about, and blah, blah, blah. This is the first album where Matt Pike is sober, and I think the result is something that is a lot more direct. Interestingly, none of the sonic brutality or even trippiness of previous High on Fire records has been compromised as a result of Matt Pike being sober. It just seems that he's more clear in how he wants to create these sounds and create these patterns. And the result of that is an album that is punishing and immediate and immersive and just totally fucking cutthroat. This thing just kicks ass, man. I mean, you've got songs like The Black Plot and Slave the Hive, which are filled with, like, pummeling, pulverizing, razor-sharp, like, thrash metal riffage and mayhem and destruction. Then there's stuff like The Sunless Years and The Falconess, which are these very mid-paced kind of stoner metal bops and jams, but with surprisingly, like, emotive leads and vocals and these really soaring kind of epic moments. The title track, Luminiferous, is a brutal cut as well, filled with some wild vocal theatrics and tons of, like, crazy, over-the-top drum fills and, like, all these different, like, crazy churning riffs. Love stuff like The Dark Side of the Compass and The Lethal Chamber as well. It's awesome that Matt is in, like, such a better state of mind and still writing so much, like, really brutal, punishing, trippy fucking music. Like, some people always joke that the best music is made when musicians are, like, just fucking intoxicated out of their minds on drugs and alcohol, and I mean, I guess in a way you're not wrong. I mean, Pink Floyd and the Beatles and those guys, they didn't write their best music sober. But Luminiferous is an argument that, hey, you don't have to destroy your fucking mind and body to make really cool, mind-bending, trippy music. You can just be fucking good at what you do, and you can be healthy, and you can be a little self-aware, and that's good enough, you know? It's honestly, like, inspirational in a way that, like, Matt Pike can clean up his life like that and still write so much awesome fucking music that still feels so true to what High on Fire has been really doing up to this point. I'm feeling a very enthusiastic 4.5 out of 5. This might still be my favorite record. It was my first record back in the day. It was my favorite record for a long time, even when I listened to all the other albums. And even now, this might still be my favorite. Maybe. I think it is. Yeah, it is. I'm gonna say it definitively. This is my favorite High on Fire album. Oh, wait, but Electric Messiah is really good, too. I don't know. Hey, speaking of which, Electric Messiah, the band's most recent studio album, released in October 2018 via E1 Music. High on Fire won a Grammy for this. That's wild. Like, normally the Grammys would just be like, all right, did Metallica do something? Did Iron Maiden do something? Did Tool do something? Just give them the award. Fuck it. And that's that. But it seems like this year they actually paid fucking attention. That's good. That's a cool thing. I'm getting off topic. Look, Electric Messiah is fucking cool. It won a Grammy for a fucking reason. A lot of what made Luminiferous so great here as well, but I also feel like High on Fire is really indulging in their love of, like, old school heavy metal and thrash metal and speed metal with this one. And a part of the reason I feel this is because the entire album was dedicated to Lemmy Kilmister, who had passed away only a couple of years prior to this. I mean, you still have your sludgy riffs and your trippy stoner metal sections, but you also have Electric Messiah, which, aside from some more dank riffage, maybe wouldn't be out of place on a heavier Motorhead record. Like, the spirit of Lemmy Kilmister and a lot of other, like, classic heavy and thrash metal is very much here. And it makes for some very fun, energetic, and immediate material. I mean, Spewed from the Earth, God of the Godless, Freebooter, I mean, it's rabid, it's intense, it's awesome. Love the really slow, painful rolling grooves of Sanctioned Annihilation as well. The closing number, Drowning Dog, which has some riffs and tones and melodies that wouldn't be out of place on Snakes for the Divine. I'm feeling a very enthusiastic 4 to 5 on this bad boy. Luminiferous remains number 1. But honestly, Electric Messiah could be maybe top 3. Maybe Luminiferous number 1, Snakes for the Divine, and then you know what? Maybe this is tied with Death is This Communion for number 3. I think we're done here. I think we're good. That's reviewing every High on Fire album. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. Now it's your turn to tell me, what's your favorite High on Fire album? What's your least favorite High on Fire album? How would you rank and score everything in their discography? Let me know in the comments below or on Discord if you prefer. Press this button right here to subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown immediately. Look, it's a special interview with Andrew Cragen from My Dying Bride. Look, it's something else over here. I don't even know. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.